My name is Odera Udamadu, and I am the cluster coordinator for the Outreach and Social Justice cluster at Holy Cross Catholic Church. Tonight we'll be hosting the Caitlin Metzger representative of You Can Vote, which is a nonpartisan voters education group. So before we begin, I'll give you a little introduction on Caitlin. Caitlin was born and raised in North Carolina and graduated from UNCG with a degree in sociology. She's worked for You Can Vote since 2017, first as a special projects organizer and now as the deputy in the deputy director role. So Caitlin loves to be involved with voter engagement, hence her role here today, starting with registration, then hearing what issues are currently affecting voters. And you know, this year is unlike any other election year. Making meaningful connections with how elections and their consequences influence daily life. So we're grateful to have Caitlin. And before we turn it over to her, we're gonna have Deacon Phil open us up in prayer. All right.
Blessed are you, Lord God of all creation, whose goodness fills our hearts with joy. Blessed are you who have brought us together this day to work in harmony and peace. Strengthen us with your grace and wisdom, for you are God forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you. Caitlin, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for being here tonight. I am Caitlin Metzger, and I am excited to talk you through everything I know about what you need to know for 2020. Just as a quick reminder, I know we said this, but this is a nonpartisan event, so I'm not going to talk about candidates or issues, but just going to talk about the information that people need to know to get registered and get empowered and make their voice heard this year and beyond. So I do have some slides. I'm going to share those and share my screen and share those, and then we'll have plenty of time for questions at the end. I know we're going to be tracking questions if you want to type them in the chat, but just know that I can't see them right away. So we'll get to your questions at the very end, okay? All right, I'm going to find my screen share, and we will get started. All right. So these are kind of our mantras and our hashtags and our goals for the year at You Can Vote. We want everyone to know your rights. We want people to make your voting plan, and we want people to vote 2020. This is my name again, Caitlin Metzger from You Can Vote, and my email address. This is at the very end as well. So if anybody wants to reach out or touch base later, I'll show you this at the very end as well, and as well as on our website how you can get in contact with us. For those who don't know about You Can Vote, I know a lot of you are probably familiar. I'm wearing my bright orange shirt tonight to remind you, you might have seen us before inside the church. And I know Pat Reed is on the call. She's done several events with you in the past. But You Can Vote works to increase voting literacy and civic engagement for all voters. We envision a representative democracy that reflects the diversity of our state. And we really know that voting should be a habit, and we want to build lifelong voters. And so what we do is help citizens realize and use their voice to build their power by voting every single year. We started in Durham in late 2013, 2014, and have kept going every single year since. We haven't really stopped since then. And that's because, first of all, every year is an election year, right? Not just these big presidential years when a whole lot of people are paying attention, but every single year we have elections in North Carolina. And sometimes the rules change, oftentimes the rules change. And so we see ourselves as an education and an outreach program to help people keep up with the rules, make sure you feel educated, make sure you get registered, and feel empowered every single year. So that's You Can Vote. I'm going to dive in with the most important thing that you'll do in August, and that is to register to vote if you haven't, or update your registration. So before we show you how to get registered, very briefly, who's eligible is people who are U.S. citizen, at least 18 by the time they vote on election day. That's November 3rd this year. People who are 16 or 17 can pre-register to vote. It's the same process. but in order to vote, you have to be 18 on or before Election Day. You have to have lived at the residence, the address where you're registering for at least 30 days as of Election Day, and then not currently serving the terms of a felony sentence. That does include probation and parole, and that last one is the biggest misconception that we run into. So I always want to make sure that everyone knows the difference in North Carolina about that law. Folks who temporarily lose the right to vote are those with a felony conviction. But if you have a misdemeanor conviction, you actually never lose the right to vote. So that is a really important distinction. And if you're talking to people in your community and in your family, just make sure that you share this true information and help kind of dispel some of the myths that people have about voter registration. This is who's eligible and this is who can vote in North Carolina. You do need to update your registration every time you move. And so if you have moved since you last voted, or even if not, I'm gonna do my plug now for the voter lookup tool at youcanvote.org/lookup. And I'll drop that in the chat later, don't worry. That is a hyperlink that actually sends you to the State Board of Elections website. And that's where you can put in your first name and your last name and check your voter registration. We really suggest that everyone do this every single year, but especially this year, because a couple things have changed. And that lookup is really important for you to make sure that you're totally ready and totally prepared to vote. So when you use that lookup tool, again, you just use your first name and your last name. You can add your county if you want to make sure you're registered in that county. And then you click on your name when you pop up. The things you want to look for are your status. And so it should say active next to your name. If it says inactive, that's okay. You can get registered. It's just important to know what that status says. That might be just because you haven't voted in a while, or they think you might have moved. There's a couple different reasons why the status changes, but the best case scenario is that it says active status. You also want to double check that your address is correct. And if you have moved, I'll show you how to update your registration. You can also find your sample ballot on that lookup tool, as well as which districts you live in. And I know a lot of people who are very active voters say, of course I know I'm registered, of course I know what districts I live in, but don't forget that we did get some new maps in the past year, just in the last year. And so when you go to vote in 2020, it's possible that you might be in a new district than when you voted in 2018. So it is really important to double check your registration, to make sure you're registered, but also all those key points just to kind of help you feel more empowered and more ready to go vote this year. This is how you can get registered to vote online. This is something new this year that our North Carolina DMV partnered with our North Carolina Board of Elections to offer partial online voter registration, meaning if you're a DMV customer, so if you have a driver's license or a non-operator's card through the DMV of North Carolina, and you know your full social security number, you can do this entire process online. And you can just go step by step through the website and update your registration. You can register for the first time. You can change your party affiliation. You can do all those things completely online. For folks who need to get registered to vote but don't have a North Carolina DMV card, that's okay. What You Can Vote has done is added an additional step, an additional tool to this same link at youcanvote.org/register. And what you do is start the form and input all your required information. And then you press the next button and it will mail you your pre-filled out voter registration form. You'll sign it and date it and send it back. So that comes with a pre-addressed envelope to your local Board of Elections. It also has a stamp included. So it does help you get through those final couple steps. The reason is about the signature on file. So if you're a DMV customer, you have a signature on file. And so that's how they can get you through that process completely online. If you don't have the DMV card, that's why you have to do the signature on your own and then return the form. So we are finding that this has been very successful. We only launched this maybe 6 weeks ago or 8 weeks ago. And we've seen a huge uptick of usage, and a lot of people are using this. In the thousands of people have been using this to update their registration. So I do want you to focus on voter registration for definitely the rest of August and into September. I know a lot of folks have questions about going to vote and how to vote and vote by mail especially. But just keep in mind that in order to do any of those steps, you've got to be registered. And so we really need to focus on registration, make sure that you're registered, make sure your friends, your family, your colleagues, everyone that you know if you can ask them to double check their registration and make sure they're good to go, that would be very helpful for everyone. So in 2020, what are we facing? This next slide is kind of a screen grab of, again, more information is on our website. But we use this tool, it's called What's on the Ballot. So if you go to youcanvote.org/WOB for What's on My Ballot, this is a great tool that kind of breaks down the issues and the offices that have power in those issues. And so a lot of times when you're talking to voters, they might feel disenchanted with the electoral process. They might feel like their vote doesn't count, or they're scared of the process, or they're a brand new voter and they're not sure what to think. Or like this year is a huge presidential election, and so folks don't know about all the races that they're going to see. This is a great tool that you can use to research those offices and see what kind of powers they hold. And so the way we utilize this is when you're having a conversation with someone and they say, oh, I'm not going to vote, it doesn't matter. Or they say, oh, I'm just going to vote for the top of the ticket, the rest of them don't change anything. I want you to not fuss at them or shame at them or get on your high horse about it. I just want you to ask, what issues are you thinking about, or what issues do you care about? Most of the time, 9 times out of 10, these are the top things that we hear from voters about what they're worried about or concerned about or watching or paying attention to. Healthcare, education, civil rights, climate, criminal justice. There's obviously more issues than that, but generally someone can name at least one of these that is impactful to them. And so when you see this tool on the website, when you click this Carolina blue button underneath it that says learn more, it will take you to a full listing of the offices that impact that issue. So for example, education. I bet a lot of people know that the governor's race is happening this year. That has a big impact on education, right? Public education, especially in North Carolina. But there are also local and state and federal offices that impact education. So one is superintendent of public instruction. Another is our entire General Assembly. Another is our Attorney General, which is another statewide. There are lots of other offices that don't get really talked about as much as maybe the governor's race or even the presidential race. There's a lot of other offices though that you need to know about. In healthcare, I know that's been a huge issue this year, especially right now. We're dealing with the pandemic. And so a lot of folks are again, focusing on the top of the ticket, but I would urge you to come all the way down ballot, look at those local races and those statewide races. Make sure you're paying attention to the county commissioner. They control funding at a county level. Make sure you're paying attention to the commissioner of insurance, the commissioner of labor, the attorney general, the state auditor. There's lots of offices that, again, just don't get as much attention as kind of the top of the ticket ones. So I'm not going to click through every single issue here. I just want to give you a snapshot of how to use this tool as a conversation piece. And we do find when folks can find meaning and find connection to the people that are on their ballot, they're more likely to want to vote, right? People feel really strongly for or against a lot of these issues. And so they want someone that represents their values. So this is a great tool. Again, it's youcanvote.org/WOB for What's on My Ballot. Then I listed all of the offices. So I mentioned a couple of them just offhand. This is a fuller list, and you'll notice it's a lot, right? It's not just 2 or 3 or 4. There's over 20 races that you'll see on your ballot this year. So again, this is one of the reasons why it's so important to do your lookup so you can see your sample ballot and that you can be noticing which races you'll see specifically and the candidates that you need to research. So again, I'm not going to go through every single one of them right now, but it's a big list, right? It's a long ballot this year. And so folks need to be prepared for that. And that's part of our education too, is to kind of remind people of all the offices that they'll see and the powers that those office holders have. Another note that you need to know for 2020 is that photo ID is not required. I know it's been in the news back and forth and there's been some lawsuits, but there will not be photo ID in place for the fall 2020 election. So some people will have to show proof of residency, and I'll talk about that when I get to early voting. But in general, most people, definitely no one is going to be required to show photo ID. If someone has to verify their address using same-day registration, that's about verifying your address. not about your photo, okay? So quickly, when and where to vote. You have 3 ways to vote in North Carolina. Voting early is a great option. It's our #1 option, recommendation. You can go to any early voting site in your county. So I think most people on this call are in Durham County or maybe Orange or Wake. Those locations have been decided, almost all of them in the Triangle, unless you're in Chatham. They're not decided yet, but all those other ones have been decided. And so you can actually go to the Board of Elections website and look at the county sites that they chose this year. Any registered voter can go to any early voting site in their county. So that's one thing that's very convenient, right? You can choose any place. Another great thing about it is that we have 17 days of early voting. We're very lucky. We have a long early voting period that is very convenient for most people. And then maybe the best thing about it is that we have same-day registration in North Carolina. So that means that people can get registered and vote the same day. That's only available at early voting though. And so that's a great option. You can choose to vote on election day. Alternatively, that is November 3rd. It's a Tuesday. You have to go to your assigned polling location. And so again, with the lookup tool, what we recommend is using that lookup tool to know where to go on election day, because some of those locations have changed as well. One of the things that counties are doing in this pandemic time is looking for sites that are much larger and that allow for social distancing. And so even if you've gone to the same place to vote, for the past 20 years, we still want you to use the lookup tool and make sure that that's still your polling location. And just keep in mind that that's only for election day, that it matters where you go, okay? During early voting, you can go anywhere. On election day, you go to your assigned place. And then the other option is to vote by mail. And any registered voter can vote by mail in North Carolina. You don't have to give a reason. Just remember that you have to be registered in order to do that. I'll talk more about this because I know folks are very interested in it. But one quick thing to remember is that it's a 2-step process. There's an absentee ballot request form that you have to fill out and complete and send back. And that is different than the ballot, which you receive in the mail, you vote, and then you return. So each one of them has a different process and has different rules. And those rules sometimes change, often change. And even if you voted by mail in the March primary of 2020, some of those rules have changed. So another thing to know about vote by mail is that it's really important to read the fine print and really important to follow those instructions to the letter. So the request form has to be filled out by the voter or the near relative, and it can be turned into the Board of Elections either in person, by mail, you can fax it, you can email it, you can return it to them in person even, but it has to be turned in by the voter or the near relative or a MAT team. Then you get your ballot in the mail. Then you fill out your ballot and complete it. You have to get it witnessed. There is still a witness requirement, although for 2020, there's only one person required one witness required. And then you have to return the ballot. So same thing, you have a couple options. For folks who want to go ahead and get it turned in right away, you can drop it back in the mail in September. Ballots start getting mailed out in September. So fill it out and put it right back in the mail. If you don't want to put it in the mail and you want to drop it off in person, you can either take it to your Board of Elections office, so that's your countywide office, or you can actually also bring it to your early voting site during early voting period. So you have a couple different options there. Again, the thing to remember though is that you really have to follow the instructions closely. And so when you fill out the request form and get your ballot in the mail, it comes with an instruction sheet. And it can sometimes look overwhelming. It is a little bit overwhelming, but it's really important that you follow it because vote by mail often has ballots cast or attempted that don't actually get cast and don't get counted because folks accidentally sign on the wrong line or it's accidentally turned in late. Small little changes will cause your ballot to not count if you don't follow the instructions really closely. Excuse me. Here's another graphic that we just like to show about early voting. Those dates are the 15th through the 31st of October. So that's coming up very quickly. Again, there's nights and weekends available. It's 17 full days of early voting. You can choose the date, you can choose the location, you can use same-day registration. A lot of good things happening for early voting. Election day is November 3rd. Another thing to remember about that day, if you go vote on election day, polls are always open from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And if you're in line at 7:30, stay in line. If you show up at 8:15, they're not going to let you get in line, even if people are still in line. And that often happens on election day, right? People wait until the last minute, or the deadline just feels more motivating to go that day. But if you show up before 7:30 or at 7:30 and get in line, you can stay in line until you're able to cast your ballot. I think in 2016, some people in Durham were casting their ballot close to midnight, but they had been there before the polls closed at 7:30. A couple resources. These are some new things that You Can Vote has done this year, so we want to make sure that you know about them. Oh, excuse me, sorry about that. One of my cords moved. The Voting Rights Champions program is a new way that we are distributing materials and making sure that voters have what they need right now. This is a new program that we've just launched as our response to this pandemic situation. We can't be out doing the events like we normally do. You know, you might be used to seeing us in our orange shirts at churches and at Food Lions and at festivals, talking to voters and distributing materials. Since we're not able to do that right now, the Voting Rights Champion program is something that we created to help our partners, our community partners, distribute this information and get it into the hands of voters. And so we do have a request form on our website. Organizations or people can sign up and agree to tell us how they're going to distribute the materials. And then we'll have a short conversation with you. We are calling every single person that puts in the request, making sure you have a good understanding about how to use the materials. And then we offer these materials to you. There's no cost. We have posters, fridge cards, yard signs, masks. We have new little flowchart things that tell you how to do the registration tool. We do have paper forms for registration as well as absentee ballot requests. Just keep in mind that most of that, all of that you can do online in the next couple weeks. And so we don't really need to focus on the paper forms like we usually do. You can use that online voter registration link. And there's an online portal coming for absentee ballot requests. That will go live next week. So the Champions program is a great way to get involved and help folks get the information that they need, even though it's not us passing it out personally at events. We have also updated our new FAQ document, so our frequently asked questions. There has been a lot going on this year, right? And a lot of questions have come in to us on a daily basis. It's a lot about vote by mail. It's a lot about voter ID. What about students who might be displaced? So there's a lot of questions coming at us. So we made this document. It is on our website and just kind of goes through all of those questions and answers. For the most part, if you have a question, someone else has the same one. And so we have created this document as a shareable thing. You can put it on your social media. You can print it. You can attach it to an email. I can show you to you on our website too. So it's easy to use and easy to share. And so that's one way too that we can share information with people when we can't be out having conversations. Social media toolkit. This is another new thing that we've created this year. This has graphics and sample posts that if you're active on social media, we would love for you to use some of this language. All of our communications is motivated by taking action. And so it's never, hey, are you registered to vote? It's, have you moved since you last voted? Let's get your registration updated, right? So the talking points and the sample posts always drive people to act and motivate people to take action. So we have an entire toolkit that is free for you to grab on our website. There are posts about taking the pledge to vote, registering online, becoming a voting rights champion, coming to a training, which I'll talk about in a minute, and knowing what's on your ballot. So it's a lot of information to share, but if you're active on social media, this is one way that you can make sure that folks have good and factual and nonpartisan information. You know, a lot of people are active on social media, but they're not sharing true things. And so if you are active on social media, this is just another way that you can help make sure people get the right information. Okay. So a couple things you can do right now. This is, again, one of the same questions that we're getting all the time. As I mentioned, voter registration. Confirm your registration. Do it today. Make your plan to vote. So choose which one of the 3 ways is probably best for you. And then tell 10 friends, right? So it's not just about you, one person, if you're registered to vote. But after you confirm your voter registration and look up your sample ballot and make your plan about where to go, tell your friends that you did that and invite them to do the same. We want to kind of empower ourselves, empower others this year, especially. We do have ongoing webinars and empowerment trainings. So you might have been to one of our volunteer trainings in the past where we gather everyone together and give you an update and give out t-shirts and sign you up for shifts. We are doing that all online now, similar to this on Zoom. And so if you go to our events page, you'll see lots of options there about coming to webinars, coming to weekly trainings, and phone banks and text banks. We have a lot of things happening where folks that you can sign up for online. Just know that the training is a prerequisite for phone banks and text banks. So similar to how we've done in the past, you have to come and get a training and learn the latest, learn the do's and don'ts of what to say and what not to say before you can volunteer with us. But even if you don't want to volunteer with us, we'd love for you to come to a training or come to one of the webinars. We do have a Faith Leaders webinar once a month. We have a Campus Leaders webinar once a month, small business and nonprofit webinar once a month. So there's lots of different ways for you to plug into that. Champions I mentioned, but again, that link is youcanvote.org/champions, and I can show you on the website too in 1 second. Another great thing this year to consider that you might or might not have done before is to become a poll worker. Counties do need more people to help man the polls this year. These are paid positions. You get hired by the county. It's a flexible schedule. You can work during early voting or part of early voting and election day. It will be critical for 2020 though. And one of the reasons, as well as just because it's fun to do and a good way to learn about elections, is that, as I mentioned, some of the sites are much bigger to allow for social distancing. And a lot of counties have more sites than they usually have to, again, allow for more social distancing. So each county is recruiting about 20% more people than they have in the past. So they still need people. Again, it's paid. It's a great opportunity for you. You can invite us to come into a speaking engagement similar to this. We can kind of zoom in and give a short presentation. So if you're part of a civic group or a campus group, or if you have a staff meeting, if you run your own business, we'd love to come in and just help share the information. Again, we're not doing our regular scheduled things, so this is another opportunity for us to share this information out. And then social media, I will always plug social media because so many people use it that, and we are creating a ton more social media than we ever have before. So you can follow us on social and just share what we share, or you can get an idea of kind of the topics that we're sharing and share something similar within your circles as well. The pledge to vote is important because this is also something new we're doing this year. Because when we start reaching out to voters and start making phone calls, we are going to be individually calling every single person that takes the pledge. And that's, again, because we want to be able to have a conversation with someone and make sure that they have gotten registered, that they know where to go, that there's, if anything changes or if anything kind of shifts in the rules, people are going to need to hear from us and have a longer conversation. And so that pledge is a great way if you're sharing an email blast, if you can text it to your friends. And what that will do is just kind of put them on our list to call, because we will be doing those personalized follow-up calls with everyone that takes the pledge with us this year. That's the end. So here's my contact information as well. I know that was a lot of me just yammering on to you, so I'm going to stop sharing here in a second and we'll do a couple questions. This is, again, my email is here and it's on our website too. Actually, I'm going to show one more thing if that's okay. If I can get out of this. Yeah, I did pull this up. So we do have a, can folks see that? I just shifted into the website. Okay. So this is our new voter guide, and this has basically all the information that I just shared with you, but has the materials kind of laid out along with the links that you need to know. So this is our new and updated fridge card. This is the front side. Of course, it has early voting and election day, as well as the census. It is not too late to take the census. We're still pushing that when we need people to get counted. So the ways to participate are there. The second side of the fridge card has the 3 ways to vote and who's eligible. This is a QR code for folks who are very savvy with those. You basically take a picture of that and it goes straight to our website. I don't know more than that. It's kind of like a magical thing. It's a QR code. Registering to vote. Here is the website. I'm going to click on that and see if that, okay, that goes over to the registration link. You can confirm your registration and go through those steps. It lists out the steps here of how to use that online voter registration tool. Let me go back one time. I'm just going to keep scrolling. So here's that what's on the ballot tool that I talked about. For folks who are interested in learning about these issues, I'm going to scroll down to education because I said that one earlier. If you talk to someone who's interested in education or who wants more information, or if you care about education and you click this little button that says learn more and then scroll down, you'll learn about these offices: school board, county commissioners, superintendent of public instruction. Scroll a little bit more, the General Assembly, the governor, the U.S. House of Representatives. So it's kind of a snapshot of the offices that you'll see. And you might have noticed that we started locally, right? We're starting on the local level with the school board, county, and statewide. And that's true of all those issues. So I'll show you on climate too. If climate is an issue that you're interested in, or environmental rights, we're starting with soil and water, right? Very kind of a smaller race. Not a lot of people might be paying attention to that. It is on your ballot though this year. Commissioner of Agriculture. We did choose to put county commissioner or mayors and city council. That's in 2021. So keep in mind that you don't stop being a voter in 2020. There's more decisions being made by elected officials next year too. A General Assembly, governor, attorney general. So you get the idea. This is kind of just an outline about using the issues and the information that people really care about and people want to be empowered about, and tying it directly to the offices that they'll see on their ballot this year. So that's the what's on the ballot. Then there is, it just started thundering. Hope everyone can still hear me. It must be almost 7 in Durham. There's information on voter ID, as well as how to find us and how to reach us at the bottom. So I'm gonna stop sharing and see if we have questions. Let's see. Let me switch you back over. Let me find your name. All right, change host. All right, folks, let's see. Do we have questions in the chat?
First off, great presentation, Caitlin.
Oh, good.
So we all can appreciate the information of coming ahead of these elections. So I'll start off with the first question.
Okay.
It reads, what if I was sent home from college due to the pandemic and registered to vote there? What are my options?
Yeah, we're getting that one a lot. And it is on the FAQ document, so I'll shout that out one more time. Basically, it's up to the voter to decide. And so if someone is temporarily displaced, then they can choose to, if that's what they consider home. So for example, if you're in Durham and you're in school at Central or Duke or Durham Tech, but then you have to move quickly somewhere else, if you intend to come back to Durham and if you consider Durham your home, you can actually keep your registration here and either vote by mail from somewhere else or come back here to vote during early voting. For folks who have to move away or go somewhere else, but they're not sure if they're going to return and they're not sure if this is where they're going to be calling home, they should update their registration to where they are calling home. So even that, if that's within the same county, if your address changes for any reason, you should update your registration.
Great information. The next question is, How do I know if my absentee ballot request was received?
Yeah, they don't track it like they used to. And so if you've put in the request form, it used to show up on your voter lookup tool, but it's not publicly available anymore. So the rule of thumb is that if you don't hear from your county board, no news is good news. If you submit an absentee ballot request form and you did it incorrectly or left something off, they'll contact you. And so if you don't hear from them, you should assume that it's okay. And ballots start getting mailed out on September 4th. So we're coming up to the time that you might start getting that ballot in the mail.
Okay, so they'll be ready September 4th.
They start getting mailed out September 4th. Yep.
All right. Next question. Can someone else drop off your absentee ballot at the Board of Elections?
It depends. So it's the voter or the near relative. And they do define near relative very specifically. So for example, stepmom or dad is okay, but cousin is not. So again, it's on the FAQ document. It's also on the absentee ballot instructions, specifically who can and cannot handle the ballot.
Okay, great. So the FAQ page is a very great resource for all those who may have questions that we don't get a chance to touch. Okay, this is a more specific question. My grandmother has returned from Nigeria after 7 years and was a U.S. citizen before she left. Can she register to go and vote?
As long as you still maintain your U.S. citizenship. You do have to be a U.S. citizen to register in North Carolina, in the U.S.
Okay. And one question was, what are the options for college students? But you already touched on that.
Yeah, they can choose. Yep.
Here's one. Where else can you drop off your absentee ballots?
You can drop it at your Board of Elections. At any point, you can drop it into the mail as soon as you finish filling it out, or early voting sites during the early voting period.
Okay, so at early voting sites only during the early voting period.
Correct.
Or Board of Elections.
Board of Elections office. Yep.
Yeah, great.
I'm gonna drop this in the chat. Yep.
All right, so if you guys see the chat, Caitlin dropped a link to the FAQ, so that's a very, very great page to check out after the meeting to address any concerns or questions you may have. Are there any more questions? If anyone has a question that they didn't select, feel free to raise your hand, and if you go to your icon on the participants list, you can raise your hand. That's a little feature, and you can ask a live question for Caitlin.
And I see Quincy actually sent me one, it looks like, about the mailing that went out. Is that what you want me to address?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and let him ask.
Okay.
So,
You want to unmute him?
go ahead.
The question is, I received one and the wife received two from a group called Center for Voter Information, CVI, suggesting that I send this back in to request an absentee ballot. I didn't ask for this, but it showed up anyways. Is that?
So there are lots of groups that are going to be sending out the blank absentee ballot request. And so if it's blank without any of your information filled in already, like if it's not pre-filled, you can use that same one if you choose to vote by mail. There were some other mailings that happened closer to the over the summer, but remember those rules changed. And so it used to be that you could send pre-filled information, but that changed recently. So what you've got to know for the fall election is that it's got to be you, the voter, or the near relative that completes the entire form.
And is there a form online that lets me know whether or not this is legitimate? I can't tell whether or not this is an actual absentee ballot request form.
Does it say 2020 at the top? 2020
yes.
Absentee request form?
State absentee ballot request form, yes.
Yeah, it's most likely the same one. You can always call your county board. They are aware of all those mailings because people definitely were concerned when they started getting them unsolicited. but you can check with them to make sure. But generally, if it says 2020 at the top and it's completely blank and lets you fill in all the information, you can compare it to the one online if you want, or you can just disregard it and throw it away if you want to.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, you're muted, Adara. I can
Thank
see you. I can see you, but not, yeah.
All right. So next up, Robert has a question. All right.
Okay.
So
Robert, we
Robert,
can't, oh, there you go.
Can you
Okay.
hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. If you have an absentee ballot form, but you choose to vote early, what do you do with that absentee ballot form?
Do you mean the actual ballot? If you've requested a ballot? The actual ballot, yeah.
Yeah.
So if you request a ballot but then choose to vote in person, you can
Yes.
either fill it out at home and vote it normally and then just turn it in person, or you can just disregard it. You cannot do both. And so if you requested a ballot but then choose to go vote in person, that's okay. You still have the option to vote in person as long as you haven't returned your mail-in ballot.
Okay, but I do not have to submit that absentee ballot form
Right.
when
That's
I
right.
vote.
That's
I don't
right.
have to submit it. Okay, just disregard it.
Just disregard.
All right.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I think there may be some concerns about this with the uptick in mail-in voting and with absentee requests. Can you speak to how secure this will be? If there's any concerns for voter fraud, or as we've seen or we've heard stories of potential
We've
fraud?
heard stories, yeah. The voter fraud, so I just want to differentiate some of the terms. Voter fraud is different than ballot harvesting. And so a lot of folks conflate those two things, but I'll just note that what happened in North Carolina in 2018 was ballot harvesting. So that's separate. And a lot of the rules that we're dealing with now and a lot of changes that have happened are based on that. And so some of the security measures, like not being able to track it online, only having the near relative or the voter handle the ballot and the request form, a lot of those new things were coming out of that situation that happened in the 9th District. In general, though, voter fraud, meaning people vote either twice or multiple times or in multiple states, or voter fraud where someone pretends to be someone else, that is extraordinarily rare. And you do face felony charges for that. So it's very, very rare. The county boards and the state board actually have a great one-pager about this. I can try to find it and share it with you too, just about some of the security measures they take to make sure that our machines are secure, our ballots are secure, all the steps that they've taken to really shore up people's confidence.
Great. So we have another question, and I'll just go ahead and read it. Will my vote count if I vote via absentee ballot or provisional ballot?
Probably, yes. So absentee ballots for sure, as long as you do it correctly. Again, you have to make sure you sign on the right place. In the primary, a lot of ballots were not counted, and it was because of a very small thing. The witness and the voter signed on opposite lines. So just the matter of not following that one little step caused the ballot not to be accepted. So you've really got to follow the instructions carefully. If you follow the instructions carefully and you get it in on time and it's postmarked, or you turn it in person, almost always, yes, it counts. Provisional ballots are a little bit different. It depends on the reason why you had to cast a provisional ballot. A lot of times it's because you go to the wrong place on election day. And so again, if you go vote on election day, A, make sure you're registered, and B, make sure you go to the correct polling location. Sometimes it's because something like, you used to live in Charlotte and you recently moved to Durham, but you didn't update your registration and you go vote in Durham on election day. So in that case, most likely because of the residency and the timeline, your local races that you tried to cast for Durham, but you weren't eligible, don't count. So it partially counts, but the statewide and federal offices do, because even if you're registered in Charlotte, that would have been the same office, if that makes sense. So it really depends. That's kind of an in the weeds question. And there's not a one size fits all. It depends on what the situation is, why you had to cast provisionally. It might be just something that you had to prove. And so a lot of times, like for example, the residency that I mentioned, if you use same day registration, if you don't have one of those proof of residency documents with you, you can cast a provisional ballot and then take your proof later. So you have 10 days until the day of canvass. So oftentimes voters who cast a provisional ballot have to return to the Board of Elections or get the opportunity to return to the Board of Elections to bring whatever documentation is needed. And that proves that you did the right thing, and then your vote counts as it is. So it depends, yes and no. But I think what some people do is conflate, again, those two words. Vote by mail, absentee voting is a different process than provisional ballots.
Wow, that seems certainly like a lot of steps and precautions to take. What would be the best hands-down method to vote to ensure that your vote is counted in a timely manner and to, reduce the least amount of burden?
Yeah, early voting is always the number one best option. It's, there's same day registration, there's time, it's more convenient. It's earlier in the year, lets you not forget. Even if you forget to go on the first day, you still have 16 more days to get reminded. We really recommend early voting, especially for young voters or new voters. And I will speak to, I know we are living in a socially distant world. And so a lot of people are trying to avoid congregating, which is the right thing to do. But if you go vote early, so early on in that early voting period, that's often when the fewest people are there. And so like when I went to go vote, even in March for the primary, I went on that first weekend and I was in and out in 10 minutes. And so a lot of, deadlines are very motivating for people. A lot of people wait until the last minute. So if you can go vote early during the earliest week, the first week, you likely will not have a line. You'll likely get in, cast your ballot, and get on with your day. Also keep in mind that the counties are taking the safety precautions very seriously, and each of those sites is going to be outfitted with sanitation and masks and face guards and gloves and single-use pens. The counties are really taking it seriously to make sure that the precautions that we know help keep people safe, they are instituting those during early voting.
Great points. So with early voting being the best manner to vote, what is the safest manner to vote for the safety of everyone? What would be the safest manner to cast your vote?
Yeah, it depends. I'm going to defer again. The voter has to decide what's best for them. So everyone has an option, one of three ways. You can go on election day, you can go vote early, you can vote by mail. Each of them has kind of little caveats that make it kind of pros and cons. And so you have to decide what's best for you. Okay.
And we got another question about
Okay.
Who can be your witness for mail-in voting?
Yeah, the witness, it just has to be an adult over 18. There are some additional ones, like if you live in a senior assisted facility or a location where like the manager at a facility can't be your witness because they're in a position of power. There are a couple exceptions like that. You cannot have a candidate be your witness. Again, power issues there. But as long as it's a person who's over 18, they don't even have to be a registered voter. That is outlined on the FAQ as well. So I'm going to keep pushing that.
All right.
Yeah.
Great. Are there any questions? If anyone has any more questions, please raise your hand so I can give you a chance to address them. And what is the period for sending out the absentee ballots? How long will they be being issued? If you have any idea.
That's a good question. I don't know for sure. I know the final day that you can request one is October 27th, but I don't know I'm not sure the next day is the final day that they start mailing them out or what. I know they start mailing them in September. And so folks will kind of get them on a rolling basis as
Okay.
more folks request them.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I want to thank you, Caitlin, for taking your time to help inform all the people who have attended. It's certainly very crucial to know and exercise our right to vote, and to do so in a safe and conscientious manner.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And before we go, we're going to have Deacon Phil close us out in prayer. Deacon Phil, the floor is yours. Okay. Let's get you off mute. So do you see? There we
There
go.
you go.
Oh, we,
All right.
all right. Okay. Lord, may everything we do begin with your inspiration and continue with your help, so that all our prayers and works may begin in you, and by you be happily ended. Glory and praise to you forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Good job.
Good job.
Thank you, everyone. Wish you all a wonderful evening, and please follow up with the youcanvote.org. It's a wonderful resource. Caitlin has dropped some more information in the chat, so hopefully this event was informative, allows you to, thereby, you hope you learned something new today, and going forward, we'll all be able to cast our election and have our voices heard. All right.